There are, to my view, some examples that one can factually draw upon to try and create a deeper sense of self, and I do advise that one should not focus entirely on the nearly overwhelming violence within nature lest you risk losing yourself to it, which is truly a hard task at times. Violence, in my perception, is generally an easier path than attempting to work through cooperation. Both have their share of benefits, and since survival is paramount to all living beings, it is not surprising that all things that live can easily fall under the sway of violence, if only to make things easier and to raise the chances of individual survival to a more agreeable statistic, always at the cost of another's misfortune. However, there are times when some violence is merited in nature, such as competition rights to determine the strongest fit for procreation, if only to ensure future generations inherit traits that are more agreeable to withstand the demands of the environment. Don't think that this doesn't play a crucial role in nature, as mankind has proven through its ongoing breeding experiments among its domesticated animals that traits are inherited and new breeds are created and even altered through the isolation and combination of specific traits, insomuch that bodily changes, whether for good or ill, can clearly be noted. Nature's way has always been to isolate and propagate the genetic information which indicates increasing methods of survival, heightened strength and ability, and the most successful often breed the most, which in turn can regrettably yield some highly negative impacts if the behaviors breeding the most intensely thrive on the easy, parasitical life of feeding solely on another creature's misfortune, as often tends to happen over time, behaviors being genetically influenced. There are likely reasons for these behaviors, promoting the fact that the strongest or smartest are most likely to overcome and prevail, but I still have my personal complaints concerning the nature of the system, which will be explained later. It is most disturbing to me that in the case of humanity, it has been noted that those with lesser skills tend to breed more than those with exceptional skills, as they who are generally more intelligent are more concerned over humanity's overwhelming population, and they therefore try to keep themselves in reserve, even though the practice is not held unanimously by all. I disagree with the current pattern of nature only unto the light that it may have been designed as many people often believe, a subject of which I generally remain neutral on because I do not know. I tend to look down on the concept of intended design, however, because I cannot fathom any highly intelligent, godlike being possessing any shred of benevolence, purposely creating something like this place. For the very foundations of the world or the universe would suggest that they are also designed more in favor of a malevolent organism being in charge than a benevolent one. In my perception, in a universe designed more specifically for a malevolent master, the need for secrecy is key, and therefore the first foundation necessitates a state of innocence or ignorance, or a state of unknowledge, and it is therefore not to my surprise that the innate nature of our own genetic memory, at least in humanity's case, is clouded in a haze, encrypted with intense, confounding symbolism and practically blocked under nearly virus-like mental barriers, encoded with the language I've come to call the language of the serpent, or better known as madness or insanity. To try and even access it is highly inadvisable and very dangerous. So it is with prudence that I often advise all interested in the matter to steer clear of the genetic archive, unless you wish to risk losing yourself. There are many reasons for this. It will fry your brain. Once again, please do not purposely attempt. The second foundation for a malevolent universe would be chemical drive. This allows for an illusion of free will, when all things are factually determined by the nature of one's chemical composition, ranging from personal judgment to inclinations concerning specific choices or preference. This can seemingly be resisted to some degree, so there may still be some room for free will, but the issue of free will in a chemically driven universe is generally a touchy subject to me, as there is no choice that you make which is not factually influenced by your chemistry, even your ability to perceive a choice or to remember the past in order to better learn from past selections. Scientists have also shown in experimentation that intelligence can be influenced by chemistry. The problem in this lies in the fact that the consumption and interactions of certain chemicals can then factually alter the states of oneself for better or ill, and a being who learns how to successfully harness the knowledge of chemical interactions influencing specific centers of certain physiology could then basically gain access to the ability of anonymously controlling specific individuals without them even realizing it, as all resulting choices would also seem as natural as any normal behavior under our ever-changing conditions of our internal chemistry, with little to no realized side effects. People can easily be made into puppets, if only to one who knows what influences affect what centers of the brain, whether chemical or otherwise, even if it were only to implant supple yet simple suggestion. The third foundation would then be intelligence, from any variable degree, ranging from the basic protocols of a bacterial organism to traits in which we consider to be the most complex as viewed in ourselves. Since we cannot determine whether there is anything more complex to the nature of intelligence other than chemical and physical composition, there is really, to my view, no reason to assume that intelligence in our world arises from anywhere or anything else. Ideally, many of us would like to believe that it arises from some inner spirit or soul that endures even after we die, but we cannot ignore that the nature of our internal chemistry and arrangement of our inner parts are huge factors in determining our behaviors and intelligence, insomuch that to disrupt or alter any of our working parts can factually disrupt or even destroy the whole. Intelligence can be interrupted by a sudden neurological malfunction, alterations in chemistry, or damage to the cells of one's brain, and I have not seen any indication that the supposed spirit is truly more enduring than our physical being. The fourth foundation is then knowledge, which I find quite frustrating because to an intelligent and sentient being, knowledge is highly important, and I personally find it most difficult to get to the central truth of things when one's knowledge is blinded by chemical inhibitions which tend to blur truth into fabrication, or even create a preference to that blurring process because it imbues a deeper sense of interest in the subject, even if that interest is founded on a total lie. In my observations, humanity exhibits a strong tendency to lean towards fiction or half-fiction, loving to exaggerate events for extra emphasis, and determining the truth is highly difficult, as even recorded history is subject to bias. The genetic archive is even more confusing. Truthfully, delving into the archive is something that words alone cannot describe, but the place is highly disorganized and difficult to decipher. The stronger the influence, whether it is recorded history or a work of fiction, the stronger its emphasis, and the more powerful the pull it will have upon your mind. And this can create the illusion that what you're studying is the truth, when this is generally not the case. Religion, no matter which one, holds center stage here, and the variety of interpretations that have come over eons will blow your mind. Simply said, the stronger the emotions imbued to any specific subject, the stronger its influence generally is upon the species at hand. And as a warning, there is not a fiction and non-fiction section in the archive, or really even divisions at all, as all things recorded are simply kept as raw information. Truthfully, if I could, I'd devote eternity to try to get that place a little more organized, or easier to understand for all concerned, but its upkeep is not intended for single individuals, but all they who live. One person alone couldn't keep up with all the incoming information on a daily basis and keep it organized, let alone figure out the complexities of all the information already present. This is another danger of placing knowledge as a final tier in universal construction. Upkeep is generally a pain in the ass when a species' disorganized behavior reflects the state of knowledge in their genetic memory, and things tend to become categorized with preference and focus rather than centralized on what is factually true. Truth is not thought to be as important as survival, and if it takes a lie to influence survival, there is nothing to stop it. Basically said, the greater the influence any factor has upon general survival, the more it appears to be a factual event of substance, when this may not be true. I could spend a lifetime trying to explain all of this, and I still don't think I'd do it justice. So in summary, I perceive the universe as existing like this. First foundation, innocence or ignorance. Second foundation, chemical drive. Third foundation, intelligence. Fourth foundation, knowledge. In my vision of an ideal universe, things are quite reverse. That is also built upon the assumption that the possibility that structures such as intelligence or the components of universal knowledge are not factually dependent upon chemistry in order to manifest, which in itself cannot be proven. Once again, this ideal pivots most specifically upon the concept of design versus natural status, or the idea of a soul versus physicality. In the real world, your physical and chemical components have much more to play into who and what you are, and what you are more inclined to behave as, rather than anything else, idealistic or otherwise. But in a universe that was designed intelligently, with intended purpose in mind, I would personally perceive that ignorance would have no place in it whatsoever, and knowledge would be paramount. In a world where knowledge and intelligence were placed in the forefront, certain structures like what we see currently in the natural world would have no place, as there would be no need to overproduce to compensate for natural predators, and there would be no need for natural predators to compensate for overpopulation, which is half the reason we have the food chain we do. Chemical drive pretty much dictates that the more we produce, the greater chance our species has to survive. So overpopulation abounds in nature, unless there are forces in place to compensate for heightened numbers. This only works so well until the top of the food chain is reached, and unless the species which resides at the top possesses the intelligence to keep their own numbers under proper maintenance, a considerable stress can be created upon the environment. If all species possess the intelligence necessary to understand the needs of their environment and the repercussions their actions had upon it, then truly we would be living in a totally different world. Picture this: we live in a universe of benevolence. There is no such thing as ignorance, and all knowledge of the nature of the universe is known and understood by all, so that we may know the effect our every action has upon the nature of our existence and everything we share it with. In such a universe, if someone or something performed an action that was wrong or malevolent in any way, it would be known for what it was, not by direct pre-existing examples of its presence in the universe itself, but by sheer knowledge concerning the nature of truth and consequence, and countermeasures could be taken to correct it. Now picture this: we live in a universe of sheer malevolence. Ignorance is used to control others who do not know the true nature of the universe in which they live. Malevolent acts are prevalent, but because they are commonplace and knowledge of the universe is not well known, they are seen as normal to the nature of the universe and are often amplified by return actions which do little to correct or repair the situation. Therefore, evil without good cannot perceive that what it is doing is evil, but good can know evil without ever having seen it, due to the fact that good will try to learn all there is to know about the universe, not in desiring to control it, but to protect and serve it in the best possible ways. Not everything in the universe exists as a perfectly balanced dichotomy in my view. Silence can exist without sound, but sound cannot exist without silence. Infinity can't exist without nothingness, because nothingness is the perception of nothingness, and not factual nothingness in and of itself, due to the fact that the spaces in which we see as nothingness has significance in the universe. Therefore it can't be nothingness, can it? After all, if all that which we perceived as empty space did not exist, then the universe as we know it would not exist, because then there would be no empty space for protons, electrons, neurons, atoms, molecules, or even solar systems and galaxies to exist as they do. They would all be compressed into a singular object. Therefore, there is nothing in the universe which is unimportant enough to be regarded as nothing, and not everything needs a polarized balance in order for it to exist. Same goes for good and evil. Evil would like to think that you need it to be happy or to perceive it in order to experience good, because then one is reluctant to rid themselves of it, aren't they? I think a world which evolves under the focus of creating mutually symbiotic relationships would have far more success and would be far more healthy than the conditions we currently inhabit. In other words, the universe bent on completion and not competition would be far superior to our state of living. This is where I start to focus on certain structures I currently view in nature and draw upon them as examples. In the cases of our own bodies, the collective collaboration of many billions of cells come together to create a greater whole and even a heightened sense of intelligence. After all, if cellular structures never evolved to remain grouped together and worked as one, we wouldn't be around. The same philosophy can hypothetically be applied to organisms in macrobiology, but only to the degree that each unit wholly and mutually works as one to the interest of meeting the collective needs of the whole. If conditions are applied which greatly benefit the needs of one versus the needs of all, then the resulting structure is only semi-collective and semi-symbiotic. And if the needs of one become damaging to the needs of the whole, then it becomes semi-parasitical and oftentimes delves into full-blown parasitism. In a fully symbiotic world, energy and fuel can be cycled between the whole when organisms evolve with a tendency to feed upon the waste energies of each other, or to harvest already free-flowing energy, which is quite abundant in the universe as is, rather than evolving to feed upon and decimate each other instead. Nature is meant to clean up after itself. But I can't help but feel that there is something terribly wrong with the picture of Earth as I have stared patiently at it for the last several years, although I can't quite put my finger on it. But I suppose that's my personal problem for looking at an entire planet and viewing it with the same analysis as one might when looking over a person's body. A body where its various cellular organisms are engaged with killing and devouring each other cannot be very healthy, and though it appears as if some things are functioning effectively, others are not. Truly, we are in a semi-symbiotic state, due to the fact that we cannot survive without our environment to any degree, but I fear it is devolving into a state of full-blown parasitism, and the whole will likely perish if that parasitism becomes too unbearable to compensate.